Thank you very much, Speaker. I move that I introduce a bill to amend the Payroll Tax Act 2007 to exempt wages paid or payable in government and non-government schools from payroll tax and for other purposes.
Question is that the member... Oh, sorry. Continue, sorry.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Well, we know in last year's budget the Allan Labor government introduced a payroll tax on high-fee independent schools that charge more than $15,000. Now, originally when announced, the Labor government put this in place for 110 schools across Victoria, schools that take immense pressure off the public system, off government schools. Yes, they do. They do, because 40% of children in Victoria attend Catholic or independent schools, 40%, including in your electorates. This is a bill that seeks to not only remove payroll tax on non-government schools, but on government schools.
Order.
Now, the Coalition has pledged not only to repeal Labor's tax on non-government schools, but to also repeal the tax on government schools. We on this side of the House do not believe that we should be taxing education. It is simply not the case this applies across the board. We don't tax nurses. There is no payroll tax on nurses in public hospitals, like there is no payroll tax applied to nurses in not-for-profit hospitals, in the private health system in this country. Why does this Labor government intend to punish parents who choose to send their children to non-government schools? Now, the purpose of this bill is to exempt wages paid or payable in both government and non-government schools from payroll tax. We've seen today in reports in The Age that the impact of this tax, Labor's tax on non-government schools, will see 44 schools in this state pay in net value $19 million, far in excess of what they receive from this government in funding, for the privilege to educate children in this state, to take the pressure off the government system. These schools now are paying the government to remain open, to be able to actually provide that education to children in this space. Independent and non-government schools are not the preserve of the ultra-rich, as those on the other side of the House like to speak to. This is class warfare at its very pure by this government. It is simply class warfare. And it was only further in this recent budget by the Allan Labor government's decision to put in place a so-called $400 school bonus that is not available to parents who choose to send their children to low-fee Catholic and non-government schools. Class warfare at its very pure by this government. Now, we see 58 schools on Labor's hit list. We know that in the coming years there will be additional schools, 18 schools in the coming years that will be added to this list. And we know that members on the other side of the House have written to the Minister to say, please, can schools in my electorate be exempted from this tax? Can families in my electorate be exempted from this tax? We had the member for Mordialloc reach out and talk about the impact, the very, very clear impact that will happen to Cornish College students if this tax is applied. Now, this is a school, Cornish College, that only has been open for less than a decade. It has worked incredibly hard to make it accessible to local students by providing a number of scholarships and bursaries to local families. Those programs will not be able to continue thanks to Labor's tax on non-government schools. This is a tax that seeks to create division in Victoria. It seeks to undermine choice. It seeks to undermine aspiration. We know from the very clear numbers that over nearly 40% of parents choose to send their children to non-government schools, in the Catholic sector, in the independent sector, and that number is growing. Independent schools are seeing a growth in this state. So despite the cries from those opposite talking about the fact that this is a fair tax because it's applied to government schools, well, we know that it's not really applied to government schools. It's an accounting trick. It's a way to artificially inflate the budgets of government schools. But we on this side of the House, we don't think that any school, government or non-government, should be paying payroll tax in this state. The Coalition has pledged to remove this tax, not just for non-government schools, but for government schools. This bill, Speaker, seeks to introduce that change, seeks to make sure that parents have a choice that is not undermined by class warfare by those opposite, by putting in place a tax that makes it harder for parents to choose where they want to send their children to school.